Meet the new Saturn 35mm Anamorphic lens from Sirui. Made with a carbon fibre front barrel, it's one of the smallest cinematic anamorphic lenses on the market today. And because it's made from a mix of alloys and carbon fibre, this thing is light too. It looks and weighs about the same as a slim can of Coke at 415 grams. Light enough to use on smaller gimbals, rig up to FPV drones and car rigs. So when Sirui asked if I'd like to test out this 35mm lens on my channel, I was a bit skeptical at first about such a small cinema lens made from carbon fibre. I mean, how good can this thing really be, considering that cinema lenses are typically bigger and heavier than stills camera lenses because of certain aspects like larger precision focusing rings and high quality optics. And considering Sirui's other standard 35mm is twice as big and heavy, can this lightweight anamorphic lens actually perform as well? And where does Sirui place this lens in the filmmaking market? Let's find out. Now, Sirui have marketed this lens towards the handheld gimbal style indie filmmaking and for capturing cinematic FPV drone footage. And because of its lightweight body designed to weigh only 415 grams, its actual physical footprint is wonderfully compact for its cinematic capabilities. And the results are pretty surprising. Now, when considering moving over from filmmaking with spherical lenses to the anamorphic format, you have to consider a couple of things. Loss in sharpness, especially when the subject is positioned outside of center frame. Distortion towards the edges of the frame where the opposite of barrel distortion will occur. Lens flare will be more prominent and distracting if used incorrectly. But of course, these are all the things that can enhance the cinematic look and be the very reasons to buy one of these lenses. Those horizontal lens flares that you see in Hollywood blockbusters like Star Trek or the Mission Impossible movies, or in fact anything that J.J. Abrams directs and produces. Whether you're a fan or not of the horizontal lens flares, you have the ability to control those flares depending on your angle of shooting. Directly into a beam of light or the sun, then you'll be compromising the integrity of the footage. However, passing through the light sources, using the edges of objects or shooting at angles to the light will give you more creative control. And this 35mm Sirui lens comes in two versions of lens flare. The blue flare, which is synonymous with sci-fi Hollywood movies, or the natural lens option, which takes on the color of the light source, which is definitely the one I prefer. The build quality is, well, put it this way, when I took this lens out of its box and its airtight seal, I could not put this thing down. My hands simply wouldn't let me. It just feels incredibly well built. The focusing ring and aperture ring have a lovely smooth action and resistance. Not too tight or too loose that you accidentally knock the shot out of focus. I've heard reports from other YouTube reviews that the rings on Sirui lenses can be too firm. I've not found that to be the case. They both turn with exactly the same resistance. The lens consists of 18 glass elements in 13 groups and suffers very little chromatic aberration. Unfortunately, it's not weather sealed on the lens mount, which is a bit of a shame, so you will have to take care when shooting in harsh environments. And this lovely carbon fibre front barrel. I wasn't sure if I'd like it before this lens arrived, but I feel pretty confident about its strength and durability. So let's talk about the most important feature of this lens, the optics. Obviously, it's an anamorphic lens designed around the full frame format, so it squeezes a 2.4:1 aspect ratio onto your 3:2 full frame sensor. And that means that the image will look pretty distorted on the back of your camera. However, if you're using a field monitor, they usually have the option to view the feed in anamorphic mode. You'll also be required to apply a de-squeeze factor in post-production of 0.635 in order to get the correct look in your footage, which you can apply across your entire project settings or individual clips. But you do end up with those cinematic black bars across the top and bottom of your footage. The 35mm anamorphic lens in effect gives you the same horizontal field of view that you get from a 22mm spherical lens, so nice and wide for capturing background detail. The sharpness is actually quite good when compared to its closest spherical lens, my equivalent 24mm Sigma art lens, which by the way is ridiculously sharp. I'd say very pleasing results from the Sirui, and you have to be aware that the anamorphic lenses typically have a slightly softer look in your footage. Also, because this lens has a 1.6 squeeze factor, it produces better compression than the regular 1.33 factor lenses, which ultimately means blurrier background bokeh in those lovely oval shapes. And speaking of squeeze factor, it has a constant squeeze ratio, which basically means that when you change focus from one object to another, it doesn't change size. You may know this as focus breathing. Well, this lens doesn't suffer from it. Very good news. So we've seen some pretty impressive footage coming out of this lens. So are there any negatives to this carbon fiber 35mm? I'd say very few. If you're used to shooting video with automatic focus lenses, then you will have to practice your manual focus pulling skills. Get used to reading distance and dialing in those measurements, which incidentally are very accurately measured in meters and feet. The infinity marking is not at the very end of the 120-degree focus dial, so you have to be very aware of that. But those teeth are beautifully constructed and spaced exactly the same on the entire lineup of lenses at Sirui. The one major drawback on focusing is the minimum focus distance, a whopping 90 centimeters or 3 feet. So if you want to shoot those Breaking Bad style close-up wide-angle shots, then you'll need to purchase a diopter close-up filter to attach to the front of the lens. Pretty cheap to buy. I think my kit cost me around £20. I think I mentioned the focus ring is 120 degrees around, which gives you pretty good control when focus pulling. So all in all, a very impressive lightweight cinema lens for those run and gun indie filmmakers, FPV drone filmmaking, strapping to car rigs and handheld gimbals. A great step up from using spherical lenses and creating genuine cinematic footage on a budget. This lens comes in at a very respectable $1,299 when compared to other bigger budget brands. Short film producers and directors will be thankful that Sirui released this neat little lens. I have a Lightroom preset pack which I'm currently selling on my website. I'll pop links in the description below, so check those out. Thanks for watching. I hope this video was helpful. If you're considering buying one of these lenses, you won't regret it. I'll catch you next time.